Would you rather be a righteous fool or a wicked wise man?
I'd rather be a righteous fool.
I'd rather be dead.
You'd rather be dead. Well, I'd rather you not be dead.
Oh, okay.
And besides, it's all vanity, useless anyway.
Yeah.
Be a righteous fool or what?
A wicked wise
Wicked
man?
wise. You know, a wicked wise man is an oxymoron.
Is it?
Yeah. A wise men aren't wicked. Wicked men aren't wise.
Interesting.
I guess in one sense, wicked men are wise enough to take advantage of others and to hurt them. And if they want to gain wealth by stealth and bribery and stuff like that,
Mm-hmm.
if that's considered wisdom, I don't think it's considered biblical wisdom, though.
Yeah, maybe not godly wisdom.
Yeah, we are in the book of Ecclesiastes, the book of vanity. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. And basically throughout the whole book of Ecclesiastes, that's a refrain. It just doesn't really matter.
Does yours use the word vanity? Or
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, mine
Yes.
does also use vanity. But
Yep. It's kind of interesting. A number of times he says, that which has been is that which will be. That which has been done is that which will be done. There is nothing new under the sun.
yeah.
Which is both true and not true. I don't want to say the Bible's not true, but within context. Because honestly, there were no computers when this was written. So he's speaking within a broad brush, probably more having to do with humanity and human emotions and actions between one another, as opposed to the discovery of new things and inventions. There weren't plastics when he wrote this.
Yeah.
That doesn't really make the Bible untrue. It just says we have to read the Bible within context of both its time and our time.
Yeah, and what it's talking about, too.
Yes. Yeah. So, the Bible is not scientifically false when it says the sun rises. It's just speaking in normal language. It's not scientific language, but who of us say, well, it's another morning, the earth has spun again.
Yeah.
We say the sun rose. So there's nothing new under the sun in terms of human relationships, in terms of what happens when in our general life and how it impacts us. So one of the things that struck me in this, because this is written by Solomon, the wisest man on earth. And throughout this short book, he says, wisdom is useless.
Yeah.
I set my mind to seek and explore by wisdom concerning all that has been done under heaven. It is a grievous task which God has given to the sons of men to be afflicted with. It's just kind of a pain to try to be wise. This coming from the person who is gifted with wisdom.
Yeah. Not just gifted with it, he asked for it, right?
Yeah.
So,
and then he says, in much wisdom there is much grief, and increasing knowledge results in increasing pain.
yeah.
The more you know, the more you recognize things aren't all that good.
Yeah, and I like the way, he says it's a striving after the wind. That, I've seen everything that's done. Everything's vanity, and it's all a striving after the wind. You're just trying to grab something, and, if you get a box and you make it airtight, and the wind comes and you close the box real fast, all you have is a box of air. There's no wind in there. And that's what he's saying, right? Is if you want to try to be wise, if you want to try to be a fool, everything's just you're just chasing wind. You're just gonna grab yourself a box of nothing.
And it's because of the conclusion of each. As for the fate of the fool, it will also befall on me. Why then have I been extremely wise? This too is vanity.
Yeah.
The storing up of knowledge, of wisdom, if we think that is going to prolong our life, is vanity. Because we all end up 6 feet under.
Yeah. Yeah, God still judges us just the same.
Yep.
Yeah, Ecclesiastes is interesting because it has this refrain at the beginning and at the end that try to point you more towards God. Particularly at the end, it points you that way. Where at the end it talks about like remember your Creator, and you remember who God is. Remember that God is the one who made you, and God is the one who's going to unmake you at the end of things. And then the rest of the book, chapters 2 through 11 are a little bit more dismal and sad.
Yeah. But there are things which again, Scripture in part is designed to make us think and consider and ponder our own soul. I liked the contrast between chapter 2, verse 18, and a passage we referred to from the book of Proverbs. Solomon says, "Thus I hated all the fruit of my labor for which I labored under the sun, for I must leave it to the man who will come after me." And in Proverbs, it said, "Blessed is the man," I'm paraphrasing, "who leaves an inheritance to his grandchildren."
Yeah.
To me, I feel that my labor has been rewarding. And of course, Solomon gets to that here. He says, essentially eat, drink, and be merry, and enjoy what you've gotten in life.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of an interesting contrast. All is vanity, but by the way, you might as well enjoy life. Don't sweat the little things so much.
I like the end of that sentence. I hated all my toil because I have to leave it all to the man who will come after me, and who knows whether he will be wise or a fool.
Yeah.
Just a funny little question. Like I don't want to leave it to my children. They might be dumb.
and I think that comes up a couple times in Ecclesiastes that you're going to, at one point, I think it says, the man who works and has no children and no family to give it to, who's going to get all that he accumulated?
Yeah.
It's kind of, it's vanity to accumulate it as though it's meaningful in some way.
Yeah, if he says, if you accumulate it all for yourself, that's vanity. It's not worth anything. If you accumulate it for your kids, who knows? They might be a fool. Yeah. So, don't spend your time too much thinking about how you want to accumulate things. Do you want it for yourself or for your children or, anything? Just, try and be okay with the way things are.
There is nothing better for a man than to eat and drink and tell himself that his labor is good. Like tell himself,
Yeah.
Well, so I did a good job. Let's eat and drink. I worked hard, and my labor is good. That I just like that. That comes out a couple of times here, and in chapter 3 we have that. Probably some of the more famous verses of Ecclesiastes, aside from all this vanity.
Yeah.
A time to give birth, a time to die. I think that was put to music, wasn't it? I'm pretty sure this section has been put to music.
I'm sure it has.
A time to kill, a time to heal, a time to tear down, a time to weep, a time to mourn, a time to throw stones, a time to embrace. And I'm pretty sure that we get a time to love, a time to hate, and
a time for war and a time for peace.
Yeah, I wish there was more time for peace.
Yeah. This is a sad book where he's just complaining, right?
Yep.
He's explaining everything he's ever done, basically, in very short terms, in very short, concise ways. He's saying, well, I tried just having a bunch of wives. Did that do me any good? No. I tried, doing nothing. Was that any good? No. Yeah. I tried being a fool, and it turned out I was too wise for that.
And two are better than one.
Yeah.
That was, again, something that...
Yeah, these common marriage passages that are in there.
And that's not just about marriage. And even though it says, for two lie down together to keep warm, I find that this exercise we're on right now, I wouldn't do it alone.
Yeah.
With a partner, it motivates me and keeps me on track to complete it.
Right. Yeah, and if they fall, one will lift up his fellow, but woe to him who is alone when he falls and has not another to lift him up.
Yeah. Chapter 5, guard your steps as you go to the house of God. Draw near to listen rather than to offer sacrifice of fools. Do not be hasty in word or impulsive in thought to bring up a matter in the presence of God. For God is in heaven and you are on earth. Therefore, let your words be few.
Yeah.
I think of whatever just happened here. We lost our video. Camera died, so we're going to change. We don't always even notice when the camera dies. So hopefully it wasn't gone for a while. Again, it's that issue of let your words be few. I was saying, I think of Job and all the stuff that he said, and how maybe you should let your words be few, which Job learns at the end of Job. He just says, maybe I'll just keep quiet.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's interesting. He says, like, I have to hold my hand over my mouth so that I don't talk.
Yeah.
Of course I want to talk. That's the natural way of things.
Yeah.
I'm going to do my best to stop that from happening.
Yeah. It goes on and talks about the folly of riches, something which it's stated a different way, but he who loves money will not be satisfied with money, nor he who loves abundance with its income. This too is vanity.
Yeah.
Someone's asked some of the wealthiest people on earth, how much more money do you need? And it's always just a little more.
Right.
I've got all the money. I got more money than I could spend, in 3 lifetimes. But I always want more because you're never satisfied with money.
Yeah, and you read some of those calculations that are like, if you started, at the time of Jesus, working a full-time job, making $100 an hour, you would not have as much money as Mark Zuckerberg.
Yeah.
If you came to now, 2,000 years later.
Yeah.
So, it makes you think like, oh, these guys they just want to accumulate more and they're not satisfied. And it's evident in the way that they're living their lives, or the way that they're pursuing more wealth, despite being, some of the more powerful people that are around.
Yep. The sleep of the working man is pleasant, whether he eats little or much. That's just a cool statement.
Yeah.
In the midst of vanity, all is vanity. The riches being hoarded by their owner to his own hurt. That's all part of chapter 5, where we're reminded that wealth is a sorry master, because, as he said, as he came naked from his mother's womb, so he will return as he came. He will take nothing from the fruit of his labors that he can carry in his hand.
Yeah. Your kid will inherit everything, and who knows if he's going to be a fool.
Exactly as a man is born, thus he will die. So what is the advantage to him who toils for the wind being riches?
Yeah.
It's just not worth it. So he's going to say, maybe you should consider just, how about this? Here's what I've seen to be good and fitting, to eat, to drink, and enjoy oneself and all one's labor in which he toils under the sun during the few years of his life which God has given him, for this is his reward.
Yeah.
Just eat, work your job, eat and drink and be merry, and enjoy life. I don't think that we're always very good at enjoying life. We always are. Sometimes we talk about our bucket list. This is what I got to do before I kick the bucket. How about you just enjoy today?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's interesting because, that's what so much of this Ecclesiastes is steeped in. Death is coming.
Yep.
If you're wise, death is coming. If you're a fool, death is coming. If you're happy, death is coming. If you're sad, death is coming. And so, his reaction is like, it seems terrible. God's going to just let everyone die. No matter who you are, no matter if you're righteous or wicked, it feels terrible. And so, like, don't be overcome by the need for wisdom. Don't be overcome by the need for righteousness. Don't be overcome by your wickedness.
Don't be overcome by the need for riches.
Yeah.
Learn to enjoy life.
Yeah, and maybe it's easier to say that when you're like the richest man on earth, like Solomon was. But also what he says is like, yeah, I have all the riches. I don't need to necessarily work. I can dwell on these things, and it seems like it could be better if I didn't have to dwell on these things. Yeah. The laborer, he gets to sleep well because he knows that he worked hard that day. He gets to pat himself on the back and say, "Hey, good job today. You did good.
Yeah.
You worked hard."
And sleep peacefully.
Yeah.
I have found that when a good hard day's work allows me to rest easy.
Yeah.
And sometimes with my muscles aching, but there's good muscles ache and there's bad muscle ache.
Yeah.
So I like what chapter 7:14 says. In the day of prosperity be happy. In the day of adversity consider. God has made the one as well as the other, so that man may not discover anything that will be after him. Just remember, God's made both prosperity and adversity. Therefore, you should be happy.
Yeah.
That theme of, all is vanity. By the way, you should be happy.
Right.
Oh, it's all futility. By the way, eat and drink and be merry. Oh, but it's all terrible. By the way, enjoy your labor. Enjoy your life.
Yeah. Now, in your chapter 7, mine, the first 13 verses are formatted different. Yeah.
Poetic of some sort? Yeah.
Right. I just think that's interesting. Compared to Proverbs, they're all sort of, centered, justified, and more poetically lined out. And Ecclesiastes is mostly just normal paragraphs in my book. And so it's interesting when they choose to make this
we don't know
distinction.
Yeah, obviously there's something in the Hebrew which causes them to say this is a poetic statement as opposed to a prose statement.
Right, and either they're doing that because that's just how it's formatted in the Hebrew, right? Or they just chose it.
Yeah, they did it in the King James, so now they have to follow it. So.
Yeah, but I think I like all of these first 14 verses of chapter 7. Where he's comparing, what's good and what's bad, or not necessarily what's good and what's bad, but what's good and what's better, maybe. So he says, like, a good name is better than precious ointment. Okay, precious ointment seems good. Having rich perfume. A good name is better than that. Okay, the day of death is better than the day of birth. Okay, I don't understand that one. I've only done one of those, right? And of course there are times where it feels like, oh man, I'd rather be dead. But that's not like my experience is. Being born was a fairly good thing. Being alive is a pretty good thing. So it makes you feel like, oh man, how great is it going to be when we get to go and be with God?
Yeah.
And then it has this. Thing about mourning, that it's better to go to mourning than to the house. It's better to go to the house of mourning than the house of feasting. It's better to have sorrow than to have laughter. The sadness of face makes the heart glad. The heart of the wise is in the house of mourning, and the heart of fools is in the house of mirth. I just like these descriptions, and it says, "Be quick in your spirit, be not quick in your spirit to become angry, for anger lodges in the heart of fools." Just all of these in chapter 7 I just really like.
I like verse 11. Wisdom along with an inheritance is good, an advantage to those who see the sun. So you'll get an inheritance along with wisdom.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yes. Wisdom strengthens a wise man more than 10 rulers. There is not a righteous man on earth who continually does good and who never sins, which is humbling and real.
Yeah.
So we make it into chapter...
Well, the end of chapter 7 is this... He talks about women, and it's different than the way we've seen anything else talk about women. And it's just something I use when I'm frustrated with the women in my life. Like, see, even Solomon, he could find 1 in 1,000 men to be righteous, but he couldn't find any righteous women. That's just like, it's not really a thing I believe that there are no righteous women, but just a funny, voice of frustration.
Yeah. I think some of that is because Solomon found that all his wives eventually became a stumbling stone for him. So I liked what chapter 8, verse 7. If no one knows what will happen, who can tell him when it will happen? I don't know what's going to happen, but I'll tell you it's going to happen next Tuesday.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. That's not what mine says.
What does yours say?
Mine says, For he does not know what is to be, for who can tell him how it will be?
Right.
A little bit different, but I don't know. It doesn't have the idea of when something will happen.
Then verse 11, because the sentence against an evil deed is not executed quickly, therefore the hearts of the sons of men among them are given fully to do evil.
Yeah.
I think one of the things which is happening in our society at this time is that there isn't the quick execution of judgment.
Mm-hmm.
So people commit crimes, and it takes decades and decades
mm-hmm.
for them to be finally sentenced and have the sentence. Yeah. Particularly, people are sentenced to death without reference to whether whether death penalty is right or wrong. They're sentenced to death, and then it's they live on death row for 40 years.
Yeah.
And there are so many other things like that. People that commit crimes and they're let out of jail immediately or bonded out because we can't keep them behind bars. And what happens then is what Solomon says here. Everybody else just says, well, why bother? I might as well just go ahead and do it because there's no price to be paid.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the hard balance is, we have to be not quick to become angry, but then also, quick to dish out justice. And it's hard to know what that means or hard to exact that because we're not God, right? And
right.
So it's interesting because Solomon doesn't actually give the advice to act out justice quickly. It seems like he's giving the advice, even though you're going to be punished in a slow manner, you shouldn't be setting your heart to do evil.
Right.
And even this explanation, when you see someone else doing evil, you should understand that they're doing that because the sentence is not executed speedily. And don't take that to heart too much. Don't be too upset about it because God's still around. He's still going to do it. It will not be well with the wicked, whether he will prolong his days or die young. God is still going to be there. God is still worth fearing.
Right. That's what comes after. Although a sinner does evil 100 times and may lengthen his life, I know that it will be well for those who fear God, who fear him openly, but it will not be well for the evil man. And then he comes back to the theme which happens a number of times. I commended pleasure, for there is nothing good for a man under the sun except to eat and to drink and to be merry. And this will stand by him in his toils through the days of his life, which God has given him under the sun.
Yeah.
I guess that, part of this, we have this tendency to put off, to have delayed gratification for things which we probably shouldn't do. That we should learn to enjoy the days that God has given us.
Yeah. And then, of course, death comes to all. He comes back to this idea that everyone's going to die, and
And so go then, eat your bread in happiness, and drink your wine with a cheerful heart, for God has already approved your works.
Yeah. Let your garments always be white. Let not oil be lacking on your head.
And I like this next verse. Enjoy life with the woman the woman, one, singular, whom you love all the days of your fleeting life, which he has given to you under the sun. This is your reward in life and in your toil in which you have labored under the sun. Enjoy life with the woman you love.
Yeah.
Whatever your hand finds to do, do it with all your might. There's no activity or planning or knowledge or wisdom in Sheol where you're going. Get busy.
Yeah.
Enjoy life. Do stuff. Do what you are good at. I also found some woodworking advice.
Yeah.
If the axe is dull and he does not sharpen its edge, then he must exert more strength. Wisdom has the advantage of giving success. I spend a lot of time sharpening my tools, my turning tools, and when it's dull, you work harder, and then you think, oh wait, I should sharpen this.
It's interesting. I think verse 18 of chapter 9. Wisdom is better than the weapons of war, but one sinner destroys much good. It comes back to me in this idea that wisdom is better than weapons of war, but one sinner can destroy much good. That either way, there's destruction happening.
Right.
But in one way, sin is destroying good, and in the other, wisdom is better than the weapons of war. They're bringing peace that are, it's more powerful.
Yep.
That sort of idea. The pen is mightier than the sword, or something. So.
Yep.
What does your chapter 10, verse 2 say?
A wise man's heart directs him toward the right, but the foolish man's heart directs him toward the left. This is not a political statement.
Yeah, but it is a funny little, you're thinking, okay, a wise man's heart inclines him to what is right, to what is good. And then just almost like a little joke thrown in there. And a fool's heart to the left. Wait, what? It's not to what is right and good. It's to just the right direction.
That is kind of funny.
Yeah. And I thought of that because when we talked about Josiah, one of the last good king of Judah, it says that he did not turn to the right or to the left.
Right, correct.
That he remained straight towards the Lord. Just an interesting thing that, he wasn't wise or a fool. He was just God's own man.
Interesting verse that seems at odds with what we've read. 10:19. Men prepare a meal for enjoyment, and wine makes life merry, and money is the answer to everything.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not.
Yeah.
And, so it seems like that's a sarcastic statement.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, this whole book is super sarcastic, right? Like, oh, everything's terrible, nothing's good. It's better to die than to be born. It's better to have a good name than precious ointment.
Yeah. And don't be idle. Don't, I thought it was interesting. He who watches the wind will not sow. He who looks at clouds will not reap. Mm-hmm. And he says, just get to work.
Yeah. Just
get to work and you'll be rewarded. Light is pleasant. It is good for the eyes to see the sun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. I thought chapter 10, verse 20, even in your thoughts do not curse the king, nor in your bedroom curse the rich. For the bird of the air will carry your voice, or some winged creature will tell the matter. It's just hard to understand. Is it saying it's not good to curse the rich because if they find out, they can punish you? It seems like that's what it's saying. But it's just an interesting idea because, just before this, it was saying, like, it's not good to be rich. Nobody cares.
True. And I think it just points to the fact that people here of your opinion of them. They, just be careful when you are talking of others, because, especially to others, because once you say something to somebody else, it's likely to be said to everybody.
Yeah.
So chapter 11, rejoice, young man, during your childhood. Let your heart be pleasant during the days of young manhood. Follow the impulses of your heart and the desires of your eyes. Yet know that God will bring you to judgment for all these things. So, remove grief and anger from your heart and put away pain from your body, because childhood and the prime of life is fleeting.
Yeah.
The older you get, the more those pains don't go away as fast. It's not that
Yeah, and if you keep them in your heart, if you keep vexation in your heart, then it'll
it's a poison.
Stay there later.
It's a poison.
Yeah.
Remember your Creator in the days of your youth.
Yeah, before the evil days come and the years draw near, of which you will say, I have no pleasure in them.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Now I came to the end. The conclusion, when all has been heard, is fear God, keep his commandments, because this applies to every person.
Yeah.
Fear God and keep his commandments. This applies to every person.
I thought it was interesting, verse 9. Besides being wise, the preacher also taught the people knowledge, weighing and studying and arranging many proverbs with great care. It just made me think, besides being wise, he also taught people math. Besides being wise, he also built rockets for fun. I don't know. It just cracked me up, the idea of that. Not that that's what it says, but just that it, he also taught people knowledge. So, we have this idea of there's being a separation of wisdom and knowledge. And, that's even here. Besides being wise, he also taught knowledge.
Yep. So Ecclesiastes, vanity of vanities, all is vanity. Live life, enjoy the life that you have, and try to live a good life.
Yeah, let your heart cheer you.
Yeah. Yep. Eat, drink, and be merry.
Yeah, everything sucks, so be happy.
Yes.